Hey everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. And thank you very much to the CASE team for giving me this forum to chat about the work I really enjoy. A bit about me, I've been here at the University of Virginia for 2 years. Before that, I was at Washington and Lee University in their Alumni Relations office. You can find me on the social web, of course, at Ryan Catherwood, and if you're interested in following some of the work that I do, you can follow the Twitter handle at WhosNetwork. I am a regular contributor to the website higheredlive.com and host a regular web show about advancement-related topics. Usually the last Tuesday every month is my broadcast. And at the University of Virginia, I work in the University Advancement Office on the Engagement and Annual Giving team. I work closely and collaboratively, both with my colleagues here in University Advancement, particularly Integrated Communications. Really a great group here in the office that helps with a lot of the things I'm about to show you today, as well as my colleagues in the Alumni Association. Two different units here, both University Advancement and the Alumni Association, work on engagement programming. So today we're going to talk a lot about digital engagement, which is my favorite topic in all of higher ed. How to define it, how to think about it. We're going to talk a little bit about how do we track digital engagement with our current systems. Where does digital engagement data go? How do we input it into the systems and what are the challenges? We're going to talk a little bit about how does digital engagement provide value for alumni, parents, students, friends as part of a suite of engagement programs. Explore in this talk about how we should be thinking about the impact of digital engagement. What are we looking to find out as a result of deploying digital engagement programs and tracking methods? I'm going to talk about how we partner up both with the Alumni Association and other schools and units to deploy a digital engagement strategy. Talk about content marketing, which is one of my favorite topics as well. I know that in looking at the list of folks who signed up, there are a bunch of people who actually have content in their titles, which I was excited to see. So hopefully this is a valuable presentation. Talk a little bit about how creating content for university advancement and engagement may be different than content associated with university news platforms or even alumni magazine online portals. There's definitely a different need there that may be addressed better as it relates to digital engagement and even digital fundraising. Then at the end of the presentation, we're going to talk a little about digital ambassadors, how to create a digital ambassador program and developing a symbiotic relationship with alumni bloggers. At the end, hopefully we'll have some time for some questions, and I look forward to taking the time to chat with you further about that. Okay, so let's begin the presentation with a bit of a disclaimer. Always good when your presenter starts the presentation with a disclaimer. But I think for all of us, this is new, right? Digital engagement is something that we are all working to better understand. What is it? How do we measure it? What are the implications of it? And I think that in particular, the web platform that I'm going to show you during this broadcast or at the very end of it is brand new. We just launched it. And so I don't have some results. What I have for you is a strategy that perhaps is a broad strategy that you may or may not find closely aligned with your department or institution. But hopefully some of the principles are things that you can take away and deploy on your own. One of the stories that I thought I would tell as a way to think about digital engagement actually is a concert story from when I was a teenager. When I was about 16, I had a buddy who lived in New York City. I grew up in Vermont, so actually took some friends down and stayed at a buddy's house, took the train into New York City and saw Bob Dylan and Van Morrison at Madison Square Garden Theater. And there was this moment during the Van Morrison set that he walked down the stage, down into the audience, and during one of his popular songs, I forget which one it was, but he was singing the lyrics and he held his microphone out to someone in the audience to sort of sing the chorus. And then one person sang back and then he kept going and then he held the microphone back out to another person, and that person did not sing back. The music skipped a beat. And sometimes when I try to think of an analogy for digital engagement, what I think about it is that we're trying to get our constituents to sing back to us on the web. We provide the content, the lyrics, and we hope that our constituents engage with that song and interact with us in a way that leaves an interaction, a actual evidence of that song taking place. So as on the slide, we'll talk a little bit about digital engagement, web-based interactions that result in a conversion where data can be associated with an individual. That's a very long way of saying that digital engagement needs to be recorded like it's like an act of engagement, much like registering for an event. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Definition, I think, though, is more broad than just web-based interactions that we can record in our central fundraising database. It includes website traffic, time on page, likes and follows, retweets, and social media. There are definitely ways to digitally engage, but perhaps don't leave that sort of evidence of the interaction taking place such that we could record it. So thinking about digital engagement, sort of a perfect world of digital engagement, we're capturing these 8 different types of digital engagement interactions. And I've ranked them by way of volume. So, thinking about capturing data at the individual level here and applying that data to our central fundraising database like Razor's Edge or Advance, all of these items we would hope to be able to do that, right? To be able to record that interaction in our central fundraising database so that we can draw data analysis from it and determine the effectiveness of digital engagement as it relates to other acts of engagement. What are the implications? Okay, so thinking about in a perfect world, email opens and email click-throughs would be digital engagement gold, I believe. And I think our friends at iModules have a product that's called Actionable Insights that would be a way to look at these email opens and email click-throughs. But the problem is that you still can't apply that data to the central fundraising database, to Razor's Edge, so that you can assess it alongside volunteer committee codes and donor information. The third one is social logins, right? Social logins are everywhere on the social web, right? You, me, everybody, we leave digital breadcrumbs all over the place on the web and are using Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google credentials to access a new site or platform. Some of our outward-facing databases provide this opportunity for alumni. But again, how is that data, that social login, how is evidence of that act of engagement being applied to the central fundraising database? The answer is that it's not, and it's very difficult to do that in some of the ways that we have out there right now. But I do imagine a scenario whereby we could provide content valuable enough to require or ask for a social login. I think that is something that if we apply ourselves to be thinking about content strategy and content marketing, that a social login to access valuable content is not something that's out of the realm. I think people, are wary to a degree of giving up their social login data, but not if there's enough value there, right? So it's something to be thinking about. So now we're moving into number 4, which is individual digital interactions. And I think these are easier to keep track of, right? Because the volume of those interactions is lower, right? So we're talking about crowdsourcing content. Actually, individual social interactions is more like likes, is shares, is retweets. But thinking about all of a university's likes, retweets, social interactions, it's impossible to track all those. So I think there's an opportunity, however, to gather a robust sample size of those and apply that data into our central fundraising database. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think that what holds us back from a digital standpoint is technical in some degrees. Our platforms don't easily talk to each other, as in importing that data into the system, but the problem's also administrative. So who is going to be the person to go to Facebook, look at a post, the likes on that post, and then look up what Joe Smith is attached to what Joe Smith in the central fundraising database, and apply that to their constituent record? I mean, there's just an administrative burden there that is challenging, which is why I think we're only able to gather a small sample size of individual social media interactions. Thinking about the number 6, and I'm skipping over number 5 yet because I want to talk a little bit more about that. But we can crowdsource photos and videos, editorials, and even links from our constituents. It's a great way to engage with folks, to, let's say, an Instagram contest, which has some elements of that having to figure out who the person is and match it up with the database. But if you allowed alumni to submit stories, to submit photos, I think capturing who those alumni are, the fact that they're digitally engaged, there's a way there to apply that information to the central fundraising database. Many of us have blogs attached to our websites and have a continuous flow of content in one way or another, whether that is alumni supplied content or whether it is produced by University Communications or an entity within the Alumni Association or Advancement. But you could track comments on those blog posts, because most blogs have the option to require someone to submit their email address on it. And then there are ways to infuse polls and other form fills into our content, our web content, in a way that also requires folks to leave behind a sort of a digital breadcrumb, right? So an email address is really what we're talking about here. Email addresses allow us to connect a person with their entity in our central fundraising database most of the time. Now, I know I have multiple email addresses, and I'm not really sure which one the University of Richmond, my alma mater, has attached to my record. But certainly, I think that the opportunity there is such that we're trying to harvest email addresses in order to record these digital engagement interactions. I want to talk a little bit more about live digital events here in just a second. But I wanted to talk, before we get to some of the other elements of digital engagement, talk about key conversions, right? What are we trying to do here as it relates to assessing how digital engagement connects with our key conversions? Ultimately, of course, we are trying to get people to register for events. We're trying to get people to volunteer for a committee or another. We're trying to get people to give. There are some high-level questions associated with this idea, right? So if you look at my graph, or my sort of graphic, digital engagement, does it lead directly to gifts of time or treasure? Or does it lead to attending an event in person for the first time? Can you go ahead and just skip over? Are there people out there who would only want to engage with us from a digital perspective? And who have been looking for an opportunity to engage using the web, or who may already be engaging with us on the web. We just don't have mechanisms to track that engagement. Some things to be thinking about. I know, of course, that it's much harder for me. I'm 35 to be out at an event on a weeknight or an event in general. I've got a couple of little kids. And it is just hard to give up my time as opposed to outside of the house. For me, it would be much more advantageous to find digital engagement opportunities since I'm at my computer or a device almost all the time. And certainly coming out to an event never actually impacted my giving history at the University of Richmond. So there are some cause and effect things to be thinking about, but fundamentally, how does digital engagement connect to going out to an actual event or giving a gift of time of treasure, so volunteering or donating? And I think that we're only going to really discover those things if we're recording the data, right? If we're finding ways to import the acts of digital engagement into our central fundraising database. Move on to the next slide here. Okay, so digital engagement at the University of Virginia to date is about trying to capture names and emails, right? That is sort of fundamentally what we have been doing. And we have really, of the 8 mechanisms that I outlined a couple slides ago, there are really 4 of them that in our first year of trying to record acts of digital engagement, we've been focused on. So we had, we have a fairly robust blog/content hub associated with our engagement programming, and more of which I'll talk about later in the presentation, but we have been crowdsourcing content from alumni, parents, and friends, photos, editorials, conducting interviews, interacting with alums on the web, and then capturing that data and recording those interactions as people who are digitally engaged. We also, on those same web properties, have those comments, polls, and form fills. You can see the form that we had that we have up on our global network website that asks people to rate the content, right? So we're trying to get people to leave behind evidence that not only do they like what we're producing for them, but leave sort of a breadcrumb that they have enjoyed being digitally engaged in this capacity. And a good number of people have left behind their email address as on this particular form, and others like it, as well as tracking the comment section on posts. So we definitely have, we do get into the tracking in those sorts of ways. Live digital events are one of my favorite digital engagement mechanisms. And of course, that thinking about how I've been talking about these acts of digital engagement, live digital event registrations, is sort of both a way to record the data, but it's actually also a desired outcome, right? So, we're talking about event registrations here at the University of Virginia. In our regional engagement program, for example, we help host over 1,300 events around the world each year. And in a desired outcome of digital engagement is to drive traffic, of course, to those event registration forms. But we also, people want to watch our live digital events. And last year we had I think almost a dozen live digital events that we registered people for in advance. PhD talks, we had a series called Who's Next, where we featured upcoming sort of PhD students and what they were studying. And that was sort of a niche audience, right? We had registrations and marketed really into the schools or departments that they were studying, so less broad appeal. But we had webinars and talks that had really large appeal. If you get one of your associate deans of admissions giving sort of a admissions overview for the university, and you do a live Google event, use Google Hangouts on air to live stream a presentation from your admissions officer, you will get hundreds of people. Particularly if you market it to alums who are parent age of teenagers, right? So parent age of prospective students. A hugely robust registration list for that talk. We also presented a PhD talk, we presented a talk from our Director of Global Internships, which was successful as well. But thinking about number 4 there, which is a sampling of social media interactions, we've just started really doing that, inputting those into the system. Looking at this is a particular screenshot from LinkedIn, and you can see there that there were 8 folks who liked this particular comment or post. And this was a bit of content that we produced here at the engagement office. So we're really trying to record those folks down there who are liking our content as part of that sample size that I was talking about. One thing that's been helpful for us is to hire some students to help us. So, we actually have a student that helps to discern, which of those folks who like that comment have records in our central fundraising database, and match those up the best as long as they can match it up, we are recording those. But the biggest challenge, I think, as it relates to digital engagement is that our systems weren't really created for that. We have no place to put likes, Facebook likes, in our central fundraising database, right? But we often have places where we can put biographical information. For example, Advanced Web, which is our database of record, has tables in it where we could put Twitter handles and LinkedIn profile account URLs or Facebook URLs. But how are you going to what are you going to do with that information? Are development officers going to be following these folks on Twitter? Maybe, but that doesn't necessarily help us to be able to assess digital engagement. We are thinking about how these systems that we have, that we must use, can be sort of how we can deploy some workarounds, right, in order to be able to put into our central fundraising database these acts of digital engagement. And I think it's good to be able to compare apples to apples, right? So thinking about how it is that we're inputting digital engagement into the system the same way we're inputting our other acts of engagement, which for us is largely about actual events, registering for an event. And we did change about a year ago to only recording registrations and reporting on registrations as opposed to rectifying attendees to an event. So taking out the no-shows. And we've done that, I think, philosophically because we believe registering for an event is an act of engagement. And so even if someone couldn't come, it shows interest, it shows motivation, and it shows that someone is compelled by that opportunity, even if they couldn't make it that night. So we did switch that around, and so in order to compare apples to apples between digital engagement and our other methods of measuring engagement, is to think about inputting digital engagement data into the system like it's an event. So you've got live digital events that we talked about in terms of registering people for those. And then we've set up a separate event. You can see that Q1 contributors, FY14. So 31 people, we were able to crowdsource content from those folks in order to use that content on our web properties. And that is how one method to record digital engagement, to measure it, is to be inputting these acts of digital engagement into the system like they are events, because that is, of course, the primary method that we are reporting out on our success as far as engaging alumni, parents, and friends. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, as we're moving forward here, the University of Virginia engagement apparatus. As I mentioned earlier, I believe the Alumni Association and University Advancement partner up, and we partner up in our deployment of engagement programming. So University of Virginia Alumni Association handles reunions and alumni career services, legacy admissions, whereas University Advancement, the team here that I am on, handles UVA clubs, our regional networks, our lifetime learning program. Cavalier Travels, we have a really great alumni travel program that sends groups of alums around the world with faculty along for those trips. And then myself is really thinking about digital engagement and how we are providing programmatic value, both in terms of unique opportunities like live digital events, but also using the digital web and the social web to drive registrations for the UVA Club, Lifetime Learning, Cavalier Travels, and also for the events for our partners in the Alumni Association. I should mention, of course, that we added annual giving. So we are the engagement and annual giving team here in University Advancement. And as you can imagine, there are significant implications there. But the biggest one, of course, is that we're trying to infuse our engagement programming and content with giving messages, as we believe that giving is another way to engage. And so the two organizations together, we've been doing it together for a long time, produce a suite of engagement programs and experiences. Jumped ahead there. One of the things that we've been working on over the last year, or most of the year, is a massive website redesign. And I mention it because it provides some context for the creation of the new platform I'm going to show you, as well as sort of the consolidation of our alumni engagement programs here in University Advancement underneath one seamless user experience for our alums. Of course, our alums don't really care or understand, about the organizational intricacies here at the university. They care about user experience. And so we are in the process, probably 2/3 of the way done, as far as infusing the Global Network site, the Cavalier Travel site, and our Lifetime Learning site underneath one alumni seamless user experience, which looks like this at the moment. So we are, as you can see, it is now developed one seamless user experience. This is just a screenshot of the homepage where we have some content areas, right? So there are some featured programs, but one of the things I wanted to point out is that our alumni sites in general, both here at the University of Virginia, and likely, of course, in your organization, are largely about program marketing, right? So it's about providing the relevant information on the alumni site that when someone is interested in a reunion, they're going to find it. I think one of the challenges, of course, is that doesn't necessarily make great social media strategy, right? Or digital content strategy. You've got this information that you want people to register or interact with it when they're looking for it, but how do you compel people to come to the alumni site every day, every week, to bookmark it because there is such compelling content that's going to be presented there on the site? So, sort of continuing to think about the idea of a site that is not about program marketing, right? But it is a content hub. I know a lot of you understand exactly what I'm talking about, right? It is a hub for a constant flow of content that is shareable across your social media platforms. The idea that you are trying to draw traffic in from those social media platforms and then provide value there with the content. Hopefully, of course, you're converting your visitors while they are there to register for an event or give a gift or whatever your key metrics are. So, it's thinking about how we're going to be changing our alumni sites to be more like a content hub. And then, of course, thinking about, all right, well, where does that content come from? What does it look like? Who's creating it? Who's curating it? There's a lot of questions in there, as I'm sure you're thinking about it. But so as a point of further clarity, what is an example of a great content hub? Well, the first one that comes to my mind, of course, is the Huffington Post. The Huffington Post is the most widely shared content hub on the web. Articles on the Huffington Post make it all over the world, multiple times over. And as you can see, I'm sure a lot of you are regular digesters of the Huffington Post, but there are live web events. They have this thing called HuffPost Live. There contains crowdsourced content from bloggers. There's original content from the Huffington Post staff. There are multiple opportunities to engage with the content, whether it's to make a comment. As you can see, there's a method there to subscribe to a morning email. But if you actually interact with the Huffington Post, they have developed a lot of ways for you to leave behind a breadcrumb that you've interacted with it. And of course, you have to log in if you're going to deploy the Huffington Post app on your mobile device, your iPad or your smartphone. So they have ways of getting that digital information, and of course what they do with it, because they're so technologically profound, is that they're able to deliver to us content that we are more likely to digest, right? So there is definitely going to be all of our feeds are going to look a little bit different when it comes to content from the Huffington Post. Some of it is also based on which content is the most popular, right? So they are able to curate content by the number of clicks it's getting, and stuff falls off the Huffington Post when it gets tired, right? No one's looking at it anymore. And of course, one of the biggest elements of the Huffington Post is that they have ads, right? They have sponsored ads from companies that, have methods to attract you to their site or to leave behind your digital breadcrumb there that you've interacted with their ad. And of course, that leads folks into their sales process. So, here at the University of Virginia and in a lot of your universities too, we have content hubs, right? We have news sites. Here at Virginia, we have UVA Today, which is a fantastic, journalistically sound news portal that has been part of the institution for a long time. And we have digital magazine sites, which corresponds largely to content from the magazine. Digital magazine sites are often deployed by either university communications or alumni associations. But thinking more about those, we're trying to foster these digital engagement interactions, right? We're trying to get people to crowdsource content or to fill out a poll or leave a comment or a form. We're trying to get people to register for these events. And so, the reality is that the news sites and the magazine sites are not created to foster the types of digital engagement interactions that we're looking for. And of course, we here at the University of Virginia, University Advancement, we've got fundraising priorities. Many of you, like myself, that are attempting to positively influence the number of new donors we have, the number of retained donors here in University Advancement, but of course schools and units across the university all have a need to raise money through the digital space. And thinking about give days, right? Annual day of giving, those are examples of how to do online giving in that sort of immediate space. Putting all the pieces together for fundraising happens at most universities once a year, but sort of in the rest of the year, the problem with our giving sites is that we're telling stories that connect with our fundraising priorities, but it doesn't necessarily equate to the type of content someone wants to digest over and over again. So if you think about, you're looking at your iPad at night while, your wife, like mine, is watching The Real Housewives of whatever is on at that particular season, what are you looking at? I'm looking at advice-based content. I'm looking at content that really entertains me for a matter of seconds. I am taking in content that connects with my emotions in a way that these stories are giving stories connect with our emotions, but they're sort of similar, right? They're impact stories. They are the impact a gift will make. But the reality of our giving sites is that there's a really good chance that a person who is there on that giving site has already planned to make a gift when they sought out that page. They are perhaps more about helping donors decide where to give as opposed to whether to give, or even prompting someone about the idea of giving, philanthropy in general. My colleagues in integrated communications, and yours, of course, at your organizations, are telling great stories about the impacts of gifts and the need for those gifts. But they can't be told necessarily in the sort of volume that's needed to create this robust content hub as part of an inbound marketing strategy. And I think that's a reason why most advancement shops don't really have a robust social media presence. It's just that there's a challenge in terms of creating content that people want to take in, to digest, and to share. Think about your own social sharing. Are you going to social share your university, your alma mater's fundraising messages multiple times a month? Probably not. Right? So, but you may share other content from the university multiple times a month if it more closely aligns with who you are and what you enjoy sharing to your social web. So with that in mind, I wanted to introduce to you WhosNetwork. WhosNetwork is a content hub that I've been alluding to that we have just launched. You can find it by going to alumni.virginia.edu/WhosNetwork. And it lives underneath the primary alumni site, right? So it is the primary outward-facing engagement tool, web engagement tool for the university's alumni population. But it is a different experience than the magazine site, and it is a different experience than the university's news portal. What you're going to get here, of course, is content that aligns more closely to some of those digital engagement data collection priorities. And one of which, of course, I wanted to show you, and it's in the next slide, is the idea of the live digital event, right? So you can register folks, and then we have a homepage takeover where folks are going to be able to watch our live digital events. So we'll capture those registrations, and then when folks watch the events, they'll be here on the WhosNetwork site looking at all the other content. And I think that there is a great opportunity here to cross-promote lots of different things. Our content on the WhosNetwork site is going to be more lighthearted in general. It is going to be on topics that are not exclusively about something that's happening at the university, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. There's a lot of things about the site which are unique, and one of them is that this is a UVA site that is powered by the UVA staff, of course, but it's powered by UVA alumni. It's not about the university per se. So what we're going to share on the site is recipes, travel tips, fashion advice, business and professional development information, along with academic life information. I think there's a great opportunity an appetite for stories that connect to the student experience that alumni might want to digest. But one of the key features of WhosNetwork is that when you are taking in a particular bit of content, you are going to see an ad sequence on every page, and this gets into sort of thinking about digital fundraising every day, multiple times a day, instead of one day a year for our giving days. And on every page there are 5 different promotional spots. In that screenshot there on the left, you can see 4 of them, but I'll point out the 5th. But you can see that 3 of them there are connected to the fundraising priority of restoring the rotunda, the Jeffersonian grounds here at the university. And I want to make it clear that not every post will have a different ad sequence. I'll show you what that admin looks like. But it's not just about fundraising. These ads could be for engagement programs. They could be about initiatives that are not the priority of the Alumni Association or the Advancement Office, but they are about the priorities of our schools and units, and I think there's a great opportunity to partner up there. But as you can see, the idea is to connect content the best possible way to the fundraising priorities, right? So in this case, underrated study destinations around grounds, well, that kind of connects to restoring the grounds itself. And so it's whenever possible, we want to connect those advertising sequences to the content. Here is an example looking at the back end. These blocks that you see are customizable and selectable. And a lot of you are probably using WordPress admins, are familiar with this, but you can see there these fundraising blocks, right, you put the different graphics in there, and as I mentioned, it could be not about a fundraising priority, but about an engagement program or a different initiative. But the idea is that you're selecting which one of these fundraising blocks is deployed with an individual piece of content. And I think that there is really great opportunity here to partner up with folks around your university. I wanted to show you those other advertising sequences, or sort of those other promotional spots. You sort of look familiar, right, with how you are used to seeing content presented to you, where these 2 different ads or promotions are built into the other content that may be of interest to you, or called out here in the sidebar. So the idea, of course, is to boost registrations to our events using these promotional spots. It's not just about fundraising, it's about those other key metrics. We're also going to be advertising our digital ambassador program, and we're going to have a robust opportunity to be crowdsourcing content, articles, photos, slideshows, that sort of thing. And of course, we're going to experiment with some give now opportunities, not just driving traffic to giving pages for more information, but some traffic right to the forums. But the idea here, of course, is not necessarily about providing something for people who are ready to give. The idea here is to provide a tool that's more about awareness and might propel someone to further investigate philanthropy here at the University of Virginia over the course of time. The article that you see here is one that we've grabbed a quick summary from a LinkedIn article. But in general, we're going to be sourcing content from alumni as well as original content. Circling back just a little bit here with this slide, talking further about partnerships with our friends around the university. Here in Central University Advancement, we are trying to find ways to provide value to our schools and units around the university, right? So partnerships that will enable us to, for example, work with the Virginia Athletics Foundation on one of their fundraising initiatives and work with them on a content strategy, because what they don't have is a really robust content hub to put this information out there. And to share it on social media, right? So that is where I think the WhosNetwork and the alumni site in general allows you to formulate these content marketing partnerships with other schools, units, departments to help fundraise on their behalf, to help promote on their behalf, and to really provide a collaborative environment. If you think through the implications there or the outcomes there, I think that you're going to, over the course of time, and hopefully it'll be true here, we're going to have more content coming in than we could possibly curate. And I think that's a really great problem to have, because I think the content, that continual flow, the feeding of the content beast is something that all universities are trying to think about how to do, not just advancement offices, but all content marketing is a challenge, right? How to create and deliver engaging content on a regular basis, multiple times a day. Thinking further about the tone of the WhosNetwork platform, it really is designed to be more lighthearted. It's not so much newsy or journalism. It's not. It's sort of full of entertaining stories. It's full of crowdsourced stories. It's interviews. 5 things you didn't know about working at the Coca-Cola company. What it'd be like to work at Nickelodeon. Tips from bloggers. It is a social. The idea, I think, in many senses, is to provide content to the types of folks who enjoy digesting content, right? And what is it that they take in? So I think that there is a different audience here, and perhaps the audience might actually have a lot of digital marketing professionals, people who sort of work in the ad, marketing, brand spaces that may enjoy this sort of content. And it provides some space, I think, as far as a difference between the magazine sites and the news sites as far as what you're offering. Okay, one of my favorite parts about the WhosNetwork site is the partnerships we've been developing with our alumni blogosphere. So one afternoon, I went to LinkedIn and I spent the entire afternoon using the University of Virginia page to use the student and alumni search tool to find folks that have blogging in their profile. Here is an example. Ashley Singh Thomas is a really prolific blogger, actually, in the realm of recipes, of cooking advice. And she has her own website, My Heart Beats, and a clever play on words there with the word beats. And so we've got content that we're going to add to the WhosNetwork site that is, of course, not just about things at the university, but things that are important to our alumni bloggers. And there are a lot of topics there, right? But cooking, I think, is one that all of us like recipes, right? And or new ideas for cooking. And there is an idea that, perhaps, you would particularly enjoy trying a recipe that another alum recommended. So we've got content that the team here is going to create, and it's myself, and I manage a couple of work-study students, as well as some of the other individual contributors here around the university. Sometimes I think we'll add some syndicated content from business-related sources, social media-related sources, but I think largely WhosNetwork is original content, and it is alumni blogger content. When I did that initial research, I found over 100 different alumni blogs, alums who are keeping their own blog. 40 to 50 of them were regularly updated. There was a lot of stale ones. About half of them were stale, but a lot of them weren't. A lot of them were ongoing, and folks were doing this, if not a hobby, but professionally. Here, if you haven't had the opportunity yet to check out the university page for your university, you should. This is a great tool. And in order to discover the alums who have blogging in their profile, as you can see, just for the screenshot, I found 34, almost 3,500 alums, but it's not just alums, it's folks who have University of Virginia in their profile. So there's a few employees in there too that have blogging in their profile. And then I was able to narrow it down. You can see there are 12 folks who work at the Huffington Post or have Huffington Post in their profile, and boom, talk about some low-hanging fruit for content partnerships. So this is a really great tool for you to find your alumni blogger partners if you're interested in building this sort of unique type of content hub. And then there's the challenge, of course, of keeping up with your bloggers, right? So once you've found all of them, what do you do with your list, and how do you know when someone has published something? Well, there's a tool for that, and Feedly.com is the tool that I found and have been using to keep track of all of these bloggers that publish on a regular basis. So every day that I come in, I've got original content that I'm ready to curate, and then I've got this incredible list of as many as a dozen to even 24 new posts a day from this group of 100 bloggers that I've developed, that I've communicated with, and they have essentially said it is okay for me to take a summary and a photo from their blog and publish it on the Content Hub, the WhosNetwork Content Hub, and drive traffic, of course, back to their sites to finish the content. There has some limitations there, right? I think that regular folks who are digesting content from WhosNetwork, it's a second click, right, to go to these other alumni sites. But I think it's a valuable service we can provide these alumni bloggers, and then you've got this symbiotic relationship with these professional content producers who could be your biggest fan. And one of the things that we're all missing a lot, or trying to figure out, is how to get more social sharing going. Well, these folks are passionate about that too, and can help with that. So of the 40 alumni bloggers that really publish all the time, only one of them said, hey, you can share my stuff, but I don't necessarily want to be a social ambassador for WhosNetwork because it doesn't fit with my strategy. And I'll talk a little bit more about social ambassadors here in a few minutes. So of course, you've got your WhosNetwork Content Hub, and then you've got your social media that is connected to it. So we started out with the vision of WhosNetwork down the line, and we've been sort of attracting a following to sharing this alumni supplied content, original content, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, YouTube. Just started a Pinterest board, which I'm pleasantly enjoying learning about. And admittedly, I should have known more about Pinterest by now, but I haven't. And then, of course, we've got opportunities to share on the University of Virginia page there on LinkedIn, particularly stuff that's that's connected to professional development, personal branding, much less so these fashion or cuisine-based articles. But so there you have your inbound marketing strategy, right? You've got your social media accounts, and you've got your content hub, and then you've got your advertisements, which are helping to facilitate those key conversions. And sort of thinking through the final problem, right, of this idea of the content hub is thinking about amplification, right? It is thinking about how to get more people to like the page, more people to interact with the content. So of those 40 bloggers that said, okay, yeah, you can share content there on your WhosNetwork site, only one of them said, I don't want to be your digital ambassador, means sharing WhosNetwork content in the form of a weekly digest. So what we're going to do is create something that looks like this, right? That is a weekly digest of content that we're emailing out to our digital ambassadors. So far, the majority of those folks are our bloggers, right? But we're going to add on folks who are not bloggers, but folks who are just digitally engaged. So, hopefully there is a robust group of digital ambassadors. I'm imagining, roughly 100 over the course of the next year, and that they are selecting to share the content that is most compelling to them. And I think one of the other important parts of this is to find a platform to be able to track and manage the digital ambassador challenge. And it's not so much, well, I should say, the challenge is finding the right platform for you based on your strategy. But one thing that a partner that we found is a company called Social Cedar. And it is a startup, and they are based in Belgium. But they have, I believe, the tool that will evolve into one of the best social ambassador, social amplification tools out there. And so you imagine a scenario where you've got your list of digital ambassadors, you're emailing them your digest. Each of those content links connects to an individual bit of content on WhosNetwork, and deployed on that individual post is this ribbon at the top of the page where you're creating in advance the social sharing messages that you want, but it also allows customization. So then you're sort of discovering when your ambassadors are sharing, what they're sharing, which of the content, and then it helps you assess the amplification of that. So how many clicks back to WhosNetwork does the social sharing from your ambassadors help to generate? And I think there's a great opportunity here, and I sort of think it's the final touch on a digital engagement program. So what are we measuring here? Sort of thinking again about what we're trying to do with this digital engagement idea and this content hub. From the aspect of gathering individual data, we are trying to gather registrations to our live web events. We are trying to influence people to register as digital ambassadors. We are trying to get content contributors, folks who are submitting articles, editorials, photos, and we're trying to take a sampling of those social media engagement posts, as well as other form fills and polls and that sort of thing that we'll build in over time. We're trying to influence clicks right on those ads, so traffic from the WhosNetwork platform to the giving sites, to other program sites, and to our event calendar. So how does this content marketing strategy, how does it impact the traffic to those sites? And then sort of other things to be thinking about, right? As we're creating goals for ourselves, how do we create content that will positively impact the time on the page, right? The referral traffic, the folks who are searching for WhosNetwork. So I think that there are wonderful opportunities here. I think it's all about creating that content hub. And I think that a really big piece of the puzzle is creating that philosophical space to deploy those fundraising ads on the content. I realize that may be a problem in some institutions. We have come a long ways, I think, here at UVA as far as willingness to do that. And of course, we had to create our own platform because this is ads for fundraising initiatives is not the prerogative of university communications. They have different goals, and our alumni magazine, we're trying to keep that sort of free, generally speaking, of giving messages. So in order to connect in digital engagement and giving, the reality was is we needed to create a new platform. So I'll leave it there. I hope this was interesting to everyone, and if you have questions, I'll take them now, or we can talk offline via Twitter. Please do check out WhosNetwork, and I look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very much.